Hello again. So we've come to an exciting time where finally we're going to attach the two bits together, and that's going to involve cutting a tenon in the neck so that it will fit into the guitar. And the critical part really is this angle here. So if I get this angle too much, obviously the strings will meet here and they'll touch the body. That's not going to work. If I get it too much, I'll get a great big gap here and the guitar will be really hard to play. So getting that angle is absolutely critical. Now on the plans, they tell you an angle that it's supposed to be, but that's really difficult to use. I mean, if you can set it to that angle, first of all, you've got to find a way of setting a gauge to that angle accurately enough. And I think it's about 4 degrees, which isn't very much. But the problem is that might not be right. If you've got more or less curve on here and that kind of thing, that can affect how it fits together. So if you've got a bit more curve than you thought and you set it to 4 degrees, it doesn't work. You end up with this nasty big gap or touching. So what I like to do is just to basically to make it as you go along. So now in previous times when I've been doing acoustics, what I've been doing is basically cutting the tenon into here to fit into the hole. And I slowly shape it, and I've got my meter rule on the top of it, and I know the distance it needs to be at the bridge, and I basically bring it down slowly to meet, and it's quite a big old fiddle to get it to work. So I'm going to try something different this year. This time I'm going to try a new technique. Now I found a YouTube channel called The Shed of Dreams, which I found is quite good. And what he does is shows a way of doing this much more easily. So I'm going to try that, and it involves making a stick. So there's just a bit of planed pine that fits exactly into this hole, but it's quite tight. So I can set it to an angle and it'll stay there. And this is going to mimic the neck. And then on top of that, we can put the fretboard, which is over here. I'll line that up to the right place, and then I can take a straight edge. I can put the bridge in place, so I can take a straight edge and I can set that, and then I can draw on here when I get the right angle, and Bob's your uncle, I've got the right angle to cut. So the next thing that I've done is I've measured and I've marked the point where the nut is on here as accurate as I can. Now the plan's a bit rubbish. It takes the measurement from here and here and you have to subtract more, but eventually you can figure out the distance between these end of these horns and the nut, and that's the measurement that I've got. So I've plotted that on there. I can then take my fingerboard, place that in place. So clearly at this point we're going to have to cut away some of where the tenon is, but that's okay because that's where one of the pickups is going to go. So that's the place it's going to be. So you can start to see where it's going to be on the guitar, and I can then start to mess around with this angle a little bit and figure out where it's going to be. The other thing I need to know is where the bridge fits. I can measure on the plan where the bridge is from there, mark that on, and now that the two are in place, I should be able to measure from the nut to the bridge, and it should come out to my scale length, which in this case is 628.6. So, and this is not an accurate measurement because I'm kind of looking through the parallax, but that's about right, 628 thereabouts. Obviously I will position the bridge later very accurately, but for now that's good enough. So that's the basic setup. Now I've got one of these tune-o-matic bridges, which essentially sits on these two posts like that, and then these wheels allow you to wind it up and down to change the height of it. So obviously I don't want to drill the holes for these just yet, but I can unscrew the wheels. So I can take the wheels off and I can use those as a marker. And this is copying exactly what happened on the video that I saw. So let's try it out. Take the wheels, and we put the wheels, and we're putting them here onto a strip of binding material, 1.5mm. That gives us essentially, because if the wheels are screwed all the way down onto there as low as they'll go, then that's when the bridge is as low as it'll go. So I don't want it at that level, I want it slightly higher. So I want to be able to adjust it downwards as well. So if I set it up with this 1.5mm strip of binding under it and put that on the top, then that should give me the height that I need kind of without, this isn't all the way at the bottom. So if I end up getting too high an action, I can just lower it down by at least 1.5 mil there. So that seems like a good way to start the setup. And I'm going to take the wheels down because I saw on the video they moved about. And I want everything to be as rigid as I can. So there's a setup. This is my straight edge. Now, the other thing I need to set up is the depth at this end, because obviously the strings aren't going to be touching this fret at this end, they're going to be just above it. So what I'm going to do is go and measure the distance between the string and the first fret on one of my only cheap old electric guitar, see what that is, and I will then put something there which is that thickness. And use my feeler gauges. I've measured and it's about 0.6 of a millimetre. Now I don't know if that's a good measurement or a bad measurement, it's an old guitar, but it's a good starting point. So then, just like in the video, I've got some post-it notes, I'll measure those, and that's 0.6 millimetres, so there's a pile of them, a little pile of them there. That then goes along here onto my first fret. Where's the sticky gone? There it is. And that should give me the line now. If I put a straight edge between there and there, so onto the actual fret line, that will give me the angle that I'm looking for. That will give me that's the line of the strings, if you like. Now I can move this up and down, and what I'm looking at is where the 12th fret is. That's going to be the action that I'm setting up. So if I know what my action is there at the 12th fret, all I do is move this up and down. This hole will get bigger and smaller, and I'll adjust it until I've got the exact action there that I need. And I know that a good action for a guitar like this is about 2 mil, thereabouts. It depends on your playing style. But if I put this across and so on the bottom E string, okay, so that's set up on there. That's leaning on the thing. So I'm looking for at the 12th fret, which is this one here, for 2 millimeters, and I can adjust this up and down until I get somewhere near that 2 millimeters. So that's pretty much spot on the 2 millimeters now at the 12th fret. I take my pencil and I can mark on this piece of wood on both sides where that line meets, and that is the angle that I'm going to need on my neck. So now I can take my gauge thing, I don't know what this is called, a variable angle gauge, I'll call it. I can set that exactly to that angle, which is easier said than done because it moves when you turn the thing. There we are. And the first thing we're going to do is to check that it's the same angle on both sides, which it is. That's good to know. Okay, now that is the angle that I'm going to use to set my neck to. So the next thing to do then is transfer that angle onto the neck. So what I've done, I've got my side template out again that I've cut from the plan. Line that up exactly on the neck, and that shows me where exactly I need to start that angle from. Now, to be honest, it doesn't matter if it's a few mil either side, because what's going to happen after I put this all together, I won't put the bridge on until last, essentially, and I'll measure from the nut to the bridge. And so if I've got this slightly wrong by a few mil, it doesn't matter. It'll still be in tune because the bridge will be in the right place. So anyway, I'm fairly sure that I've got that as accurately as I can anyway. So I'll make a little mark on there where it is, and then I'll bring that across as a right angle, and that'll be the place where I start to draw the lines in. So here we are, lining it up. Now, the trick here is to make sure you're doing the angle in the right direction. The angle's got to come slightly backwards, because otherwise you're going to end up with it sticking up in the air if you get it the wrong way around. It sounds like a silly mistake, but it's very easy to do. I'm not going to admit to ever having done it. So, right, let's line that up, and then I can draw that first line in across there, and do the same on both sides. I know this front face is flat, so I can use that as my square reference in both cases. So now that I've marked out where these things are, I can mark them properly. So taking Stanley the knife, I can start to mark that line so it's going to be easier to cut. Obviously both sort of shows where the line is, and it also starts to break up the fibres so that it makes it a bit easier to get the cut started. And I'll do the same on the other side. There we go, as accurately as I can. Get a nice deep cut. There we go. So that's marked, and the other thing I can do is take a chisel from here and just chisel down to that line to make a little sort of extra groove, if you like, which will help me to centre that saw, and not just because with just a groove, it's very easy with a saw to just go whoop and end up not cutting along the line. So by just cutting into it, it gives me that edge to put the saw against. So I've got this nice and clamped onto the bench. I'm not going to put my hand here and then do that for obvious reasons. So there we go, just very gently just cut down like that, take out the extra. There we go, a little tiny bit here as well. There we are. And with Stanley the knife I can just make sure that's in. There we are, and that will give me a nice edge, as you can see, to cut against. So that's one on the other side done as well, but before I can cut it I need to know how deep it is. So the next thing I need to do, take the clamp off, is to measure the width that I need. So I know this is the shoulder here, I need to know how wide it needs to be, and I can measure the hole on the guitar, and it's about 40mm. So what I'll do is I'll mark out on here slightly more than 40mm, because obviously I want to cut it a bit larger and then slowly whittle it down. I don't want it to be small. If it's smaller, I'll have to start all over again. If it's a bit bigger, it's easy to whittle down. So now I've measured the hole, and the hole is 38mm across. So now from what I'm going to do is from the centre line here, I'm going to measure half of that, which is what, 19. So that's 19mm either side of that hole. So all I need to do then is to measure this distance, which is 39.6, subtract that 19 from it, and that's what I can set my marking gauge to run a line down. So it caught me, I was just about to do it wrong. I measured exactly the 38 and I was going to set it up to that, but don't forget that we have to add a bit of extra. I don't want exactly to cut it right because it will be too small. So I want to cut it a couple of mil, maybe a couple of mil either side. So the value I've come up with is 20mm from this edge to here. So instead of that, I'm going to cut it less to make it wider. So I'm going to cut it 18.6. So let's set this. We'll set this to 18.6. And then transfer that to the marking gauge. There we are, like that. And I can now mark on here, and that should give me 40 either side. So with that set up, I can just mark off along here from this line back, like that, and continue it all the way around. And even onto this back face here. The next thing to do is I'll redo that calculation, stretch this out to the other side, and then I'll draw the line around that side as well. And there we are. I've been round with a pencil as well just to make the line stand out. You can see I've now got these shoulders, if you like, to cut off. I can cut down there and then trim that off, and I'll have the beginnings of the tenon. Now the lines are drawn and scored. There's only one thing left, and that's to cut it. So what I'm going to do, and you can see I've cut it and taken a chunk out all the way around. I'm going to use my tenon saw, just a cheapo one that I got from Screwfix, and I can put that in the gap. Because of that groove, I should be able to just start that cut off. Now the trick with the tenon saw is to keep it square all the way. So what I like to do, I move this along a little bit. Let's put something in that gap to hold it. There we are. What I like to do when I'm cutting it with a tenon saw, because it's really easy to accidentally tilt it one way or the other. So if you look forwards, you've got this one here. So if you could try now, so I've started it off in that direction. If I now tilt the saw, I can run it down in the direction, in this direction, which now gives me a groove which is pretty much in the right line. So if I now just follow that groove, I should find that I'm square here and I'm square here, which is nice. And I can now have confidence in the fact that that is cutting in the right direction in both. I can go ahead and seal. Okay, we're going down onto that line. Okay, that's pretty much down to the line. Let's flip it over and do the other side. And here is the line cut. Nice and accurate. Comes out to the front as well. So the next thing is to take off these actual blocks, or these corner pieces, if you like, that's left. Now for that, my saw is it deep enough? It's just about, might be deep enough, just about. So we'll give it a go and see if we can get that done as well. Now this time, because I'm going down the grain, I don't need to be an accurate cut like I did these side ones. So this time I'm just going to go straight down. I'm leaving a few millimeters gap, so that if I make a mistake, at least to be in the right direction. So, okay, that's the first bit off, and I made a rookie mistake there. I was sawing, I forgot that it was sloping upwards that way, so I hit this side before I hit this side. So I made a bit of a groove in that, which is annoying. Oh well, we'll see how it comes out. So there we have the first cuts made. Now obviously that's not going to fit into the hole, it's way too big. So now we're going to have to plane that down a little bit. So I think that's quite a long episode already that we've gone through. So I'm going to leave the cutting things to their final shape until the next one, because that gets quite involved. So hope that was useful, hope it was interesting. Please like if you liked it and subscribe if you'd like to, and then maybe I'll see you next time.